Okay, hi. So welcome back to my channel once again. Today we are going to learn subtopic 13.2 urinary system. Still comes under chapter 13, homeostasis and the human urinary system. And I hope you have learned well in the last lesson, and let's continue. Okay, get your pen and paper ready and let's do this. Okay, so as usual, let's look at the learning standard before we move on. So the first one is you must be able to identify the structure of kidney and also the functions of a kidney. Okay, and then you must be able to draw, label, and explain the structures of a nephron and a collecting duct. Okay, and then explain or describe the formation of urine. So urine formation, we have ultrafiltration, reabsorption, and secretion, which you have to be able to describe it. And then synthesize the concept of homeostasis using the negative feedback mechanism in osmoregulation. So what is osmoregulation now? The regulation of water content in the body. Okay, and then lastly, conduct an experiment to study the effects of different volumes of water intake in the urine formation. So this one you're supposed to do in your school, so I won't cover on the experiment related to urine formation. Okay. Okay, there's an introduction video that you can watch. Okay, is it bad to hold your pee? Okay, by Heba Shaheed from YouTube. I will put the I will put the link in the description box below, so you can have a look at it. Just to refresh your mind or just to have fun with the video, and then you can come back to continue your lessons. Okay, the excretory system plays an important role in homeostasis. Okay, and the primary organ for the excretory system is the kidneys. Okay, so that is the primary organ, but we also have the ureter, bladder, and the urethra. But here we are just going to focus on the kidneys. Okay, so the kidneys produces the urine. Okay, ureter transport the urine. Okay, urinary bladder, it stores the urine, and the urethra passes the urine outside from the body. So let's look at the kidney. Yeah. Okay, the structure and function of a kidney. Kidney is a bean-shaped brown in color and is about 10 cm in length. Okay, it is located at the dorsal wall of the abdominal area. Now, the functions of the kidney. Okay, function of the kidney is to actually regulate the osmotic pressure and the ionic levels in the blood by eliminating excess salt and water from the blood. It also regulates the blood pH. Regulate the blood pH, and which means regulate the excretion of the hydrogen ions and also other ions to maintain the blood pH. Okay, it also excretes waste products. Okay, waste products are excreted by the kidneys are the substances that are not useful to the body. Okay, such as waste products from the metabolic reaction. For example, urea, creatinine, and also uric acid. And also actually foreign substances in the diet. For example, drugs or any other toxin. It helps to also actually regulate the blood volume. Okay, it controls the quantity of water that is excreted in the urine. Okay, the kidneys filter the blood and form the urine, which is then exit the body through the ureters, urinary bladder, and also urethra. Okay, urine consists of water, urea, and other dissolved waste. Okay, and some excess nutrients. All right, and human kidneys are surrounded, okay, by a fibrous capsule and has two distinct two regions. We have the renal cortex, okay, and also the renal medulla. Cortex is the outer layer and the medulla is the inner layer. Okay, and the three vessels that are connected to the kidney is the renal artery, renal vein, and the ureter. Okay, so the renal artery carries oxygenated blood from the heart to the kidneys. Okay, the renal vein carries deoxygenated blood, okay, from the kidneys back to the heart, and the urine flows to the bladder through the ureter. So we have renal artery, renal vein, and ureter. Okay, now let's look at the structure of nephron. Now, a nephron, what is it? It is a uriniferous tubule, okay, which is closed at one end and open at the other, only one opening, and it is the functional filtration unit of the kidney. Okay, it has a renal artery that branches inside the kidney, and each capillary supplies blood to hundreds of thousands of tiny filtration units called nephron. The human kidney actually consists about 1 million nephrons. Okay, so a nephron consists of three major parts. Okay, we have the Bowman's capsule, the glomerulus, and also the renal tubule. Now, a Bowman's capsule is actually a cup shape, contains a cluster of blood capillaries called glomerulus. Glomerulus is found in the Bowman's capsule, which is the network of blood capillaries, which is about 1 cell thick. Okay, the glomerulus is formed from the afferent arteriole branching from the renal artery. Okay, the glomerulus merge again to form the efferent arteriole. Okay, so we have the afferent and we have the efferent. If you look at the slide. Okay, then we have the renal tubule, which is actually made of the firstly proximal convoluted tubule, which is located in the cortex. Then we have the loop of Henle, okay, a U-shaped tubule that is located in the, let me show it to you. Okay, just now we have seen this one. This is the Bowman's capsule. Then we have the proximal convoluted tubule, okay, which is located in the cortex. And then we have the loop of Henle, which is located in the medulla. Okay, and also lastly the distal convoluted tubule, which is located in the cortex and connected to the collecting duct, okay, which opens into the pelvis. Okay, this is the collecting duct. Okay, all right, collecting duct. So this distal convoluted tubule of several nephrons join together into a collecting duct. Okay, so the produced urine will flow from the collecting duct into the urethra. So this one connects to the urethra. Okay. All right. Now, so this is the basic structure of a nephron. Okay, so we have the again I repeat. Okay, this is the glomerulus. Okay, we have the efferent and then the efferent. Okay, the blood enters through the efferent and then goes out through the efferent. Then we have the proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, and then to the distal convoluted tubule connected into collecting tubule or collecting duct, and then it goes to the urethra. Okay. Okay, the function of a nephron. Okay, first it is selectively reabsorbed. It selectively reabsorbs substances that are useful to the body, and actively it secretes, okay, waste substances from the blood capillaries to the tubules. Okay, so there are three stages. We have the glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. So the activity for you is to actually draw the structure of nephron. It is included in your learning standard. So try to draw it out without referring. If you can't, then you refer. Draw until you are an expert in drawing the nephron structure. And then, voila, you know what is going on where. Okay, now let's look at the blood flow in the kidney. Okay, the direction of blood flow in the renal artery, afferent arteriole, and the glomerulus. Now, the renal artery carries oxygenated blood containing nutrients and waste substances such as urea, mineral, salts from the aorta to the kidney. Now, in the kidneys, the renal artery branches into smaller blood vessel. Okay, which will actually eventually form the afferent arteriole. Okay. So now every afferent arterioles divides to form a network of capillaries called glomerulus inside the Bowman's capsule. Okay, so blood flows in the efferent arteriole, okay, capillaries surrounding the tubule and the renal vein. Okay, this is the renal vein. Now the efferent arteriole carries glomerular blood out of the Bowman's capsule to the capillaries surrounding the tubules. And the capillaries surrounding the proximal convoluted tubule, okay, the loop of Henle, and the distal convoluted tubule before forming the renal vein. Now, the branches of renal veins will join to form a renal vein that carries filtered blood into the vena cava. Okay, there is a video here, okay, on how your kidneys work by Bryce, TED. So go through the video, okay, as you can see further on the functions of kidney, again how it works. Okay, the link will be shared in the description box below. Okay, let's look at the formation of urine. Okay, urine is actually a fluid which consists of water, urea, and other dissolved wastes, and also some excess nutrients. Okay, the kidneys excrete waste through urine. Okay, the kidneys filter the blood and produces urine which exits the body through ureters, bladder, and also urethra. Now, the formation of urine involves 3 stages, which is the ultrafiltration, secretion, and reabsorption. Okay, so we have the glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and tubular secretion. Okay, glomerular filtration is the movement of substances from the blood within the glomerulus into the capsular space. Reabsorption is the movement of substances from the tubular fluid back into the blood. And secretion is the movement of substances from the blood into the tubular fluid. Now, let me ask you a question. State the condition of urine that will be produced after an individual drinks plenty of water and eats too much of salty food. Now, how is the condition of the urine? Concentrated, diluted, very yellow, light yellow? How is it? Okay, so when you drink plenty of water, you produces dilute urine in a large amount. And if you eat too much of salty food, you get a concentrated urine in a very small amount. Okay, when blood flows into the glomerulus, the blood pressure pushes a portion of plasma through the glomerulus capillaries into the Bowman's capsule. So this is called ultrafiltration because there are small pores in the glomerulus capillary walls that allow only small molecules to seep through. Okay, there's adaptation of glomerulus. Adaptation is that it consists of podocytes, okay, which is highly modified for filtration. Okay, there are actually small pores on the glomerulus capillary walls that causes them to be more absorbent than other blood capillaries. Okay, the glomerulus capillaries are very long. Okay, and the blood flows at a very high hydrostatic pressure, okay, in the glomerulus because the afferent arteriole has a larger diameter compared to the efferent arteriole. Okay, the glomerular filtrate that goes into the Bowman's capsule, okay, it contains all the components of blood plasma in the arteriole such as water, mineral salt, glucose, amino acid, urea, nitrogenous waste, and also other small molecules, okay, hormones and all that. But it does not contain blood cell, okay, the red blood cells, white blood cells, and the platelets, and also plasma proteins. It does not contain them because they are too large to be filtered. So these unfiltered components will move out of the glomerulus capillaries through the efferent arteriole, and the filtrate from the glomerulus moves into the proximal convoluted tubule. So there's a video, okay, video link that I will put also again in the description box below on the glomerular filtration. Do check it out. Now, just now I've mentioned red blood cells, white blood cells, all these large molecules are not found in the urine. Why? Okay, yeah, too large to be filtered. And now, can blood ever be detected in the urine? Yes, but that shows something is wrong. Blood are not supposed to be detected in the urine. Okay, so this is the glomerular filtrate, okay, about how much of the substances that is in the plasma and also in the filtrate. So you can see the water, protein, glucose, and so on. So this is just for you to know. Okay. And then where does the glomerular filtrate go after being formed? Of course, to the proximal convoluted tubule, and now it is called the filtrate. Okay, whatever that is filtered from the glomerulus is called the filtrate. So there are two more processes that are remaining. First is the reabsorption and secretion. Okay, so reabsorption is the absorption of water and dissolved nutrients from the glomerular filtrate in the renal tubules into the blood capillaries. Now, the purpose of reabsorption is to get back necessary substances that the body needs. Okay, so this happens all along the renal tubules and mostly in the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, so now the reabsorption in the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, let's look at it. Now, there's adaptation that we have to see, the adaptation of the proximal convoluted tubule. It has a large surface area for absorption due to the filtrate, okay, and then it has a numerous mitochondria for active transport, okay, and then we have the closeness of the blood capillaries. They are very close to each other, so it's easy for the filtrate to move. And then, okay, so the glomerular filtrate production is approximately 125 centimeter cube per minute. Okay, so urine production is usually 1 centimeter cube per minute. Okay, now all glucose, all amino acids, okay, and vitamins, sodium, okay, sodium ions and other ions such as calcium ion, potassium ion, okay, magnesium, phosphate, and bicarbonate ion. They are reabsorbed by active transport. Okay, sodium ions are actively pumped into the blood capillaries, while chloride ions are absorbed passively along the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, proximal convoluted tubule contain abundance of mitochondria. Okay, like I've mentioned earlier, to provide ATP for active transport. And this reabsorption of dissolved nutrients causes the glomerular filtrate to become hypotonic to the blood plasma, and therefore water will move into the blood capillaries by osmosis. Now, urea and nitrogenous waste are not reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule because they are not useful to the body. Okay. Okay, now let's look at the reabsorption in the loop of Henle and also distal convoluted tubule. Okay, before that, which part of the kidney can loop of Henle be found? Yeah, it's mentioned earlier in the slide. So if you know, it is actually found in the kidney medulla. Okay, now the reabsorption of at the loop of Henle. Okay, the function is actually to conserve water. That means it has to reabsorb as much water as it can. Now, the thin descending limb of loop of Henle is permeable to water but not to sodium chloride and other dissolved nutrients. Water is reabsorbed by osmosis. Okay, at the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle, sodium ions are reabsorbed by active transport and chloride ions by passive transport. Okay, the thin ascending loop of Henle is permeable to both sodium and chloride ions, which are actually reabsorbed by diffusion. The whole ascending limb of loop of Henle is not permeable to water, hence water is not reabsorbed here. Okay, the reabsorption of at the distal convoluted tubule, the filtrate that reaches here has very little salt but a high amount of urea. Okay, more water and sodium and also chloride ions are reabsorbed here. Reabsorption at collecting duct, okay, this process is regulated by hormones. The more permeable, hormones that are more permeable to water in the presence of ADH hormone, and it is more permeable to salt in the presence of aldosterone. So this is the thing that happens in the loop of Henle and also distal convoluted tube. Okay, so this is the summary of tubular reabsorption. If you can look at the picture here, okay, go through them, okay, draw the nephron, and then note down whatever substances that are being reabsorbed, okay, in each part of the nephron, okay, from the tubule, proximal tubule, until the collecting duct. Okay, you should be able to know all that. Okay, and through what? Active transport or passive transport. All right. Okay, now let's look at secretion. Now, secretion is the movement of dissolved ions which are unfiltered from capillaries around the renal tubules into the renal tubules. Now, this process occurs both by active and passive transport. Okay, now secretion occurs mainly in the proximal convoluted tubule and the distal convoluted tubule. Okay, so secretion that occurs in the proximal convoluted tubule and distal convoluted tubule are hydrogen ions, potassium ions, ammonium ions, creatinine, urea, drugs, and toxic substances. And the secretion that occurs in the collecting duct is for potassium ions and also hydrogen ions. Okay, now two important functions of secretion is to eliminate unwanted substances which are not filtered out through ultrafiltration, and also to regulate blood pH, which is between 7.3 to 7.5. For example, if the blood becomes too acidic, hydrogen ions are secreted into the filtrate, and if blood pH is too alkaline, then bicarbonate ions are secreted out. Okay, so now urine formation. Now, when the renal fluid reaches the collecting duct, only a small amount of salts are left, and most of the water has been reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. Now, this remaining renal fluid is now called urine. It flows into the collecting duct. Now, here a small amount of urea diffuses out in the surrounding fluid and blood capillaries due to its small molecular size. Urine contains water, urea, sodium chloride salt, uric acid, and creatinine. Okay, after leaving the collecting duct, urine flows into the ureter, bladder, and urethra, and then it is finally excreted. Now, the bladder is able to store about 400 to 500 centimeter cube of urine, and after about 200 centimeter cube of urine stored in the bladder, the stretch receptors in the bladder will send a stimulus to urinate. You will feel the urge to go and pee. So this is the conclusion. Okay, you can look at that, a nephron function. Okay, we have the glomerulus, which filters low molecular weight and also water soluble compounds, and it conserves the red blood cells and most protein. Proximal tubule, conservation of most ions, okay, and elimination of urea and creatinine. We have the loop of Henle, the creation of the osmotic gradient. Okay, distal convoluted tubule, which have the secretion of potassium hydrogen ions under aldosterone control, and the collecting tubule will determine the final urine volume. Okay, and osmolality under the control of antidiuretic hormone ADH, and then that urine is formed. Okay, there is a question on summative practice 13, question 7. Now, let's discuss this question. Now, figure 1 shows the structure of a nephron and a collecting duct. Name the process that happens in J. Now, J is the glomerulus, so ultrafiltration happens, the Bowman's capsule, sorry. Now, name two substances that are not filtered out through the glomerulus. Not filtered out. So, we have blood cells and plasma protein. Now, explain how the process you name in A occurs. Okay. The diameter of the afferent arteriole that carries blood into the glomerulus is larger than the diameter of the efferent arteriole that carries blood out. Okay, so this creates a high hydrostatic pressure in the glomerulus and pushes the molecules into specific sizes such as glucose, amino acids, okay, and amino acids out across two cell thick wall between the capillary wall and also the inner wall of the Bowman's capsule. So basically, you're talking about the ultrafiltration. Now, why fluid flowing in loop of Henle does not contain glucose even though glucose is present in Bowman's capsule? So, glucose was reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule through active transport. And mammals have different kidney structures depending on the presence of water and their habitat. So, the concentration of urine produced depends on the length and of the loop of Henle. The longer the loop of Henle, the higher salt concentration in the fluid surrounding the loop of Henle. And based on this information, what can you predict about loop of Henle in animals living in humid environment compared to animals living in dry environment? So the difference. So now animals that live in dry environment have longer loop of Henle, okay, compared to animals living in a moist environment. So why this actually enables more water to be reabsorbed through the loop of Henle, and this results in concentrated urine. Okay. Okay, another hot question. Now, in your opinion, what is the effect of urine excretion if food consumed contains large quantities of protein? Okay, so if you know protein digested into amino acid. So excess amino acid are actually toxic and cannot be stored. Now, through deamination, the nitrogenous part of amino acid is converted to urea, while the non-nitrogenous or the carbon chain part is converted into glycogen or fat for storage. Now, urea is a nitrogenous waste product that needs to be excreted through the urine. Since urea concentration is high in a person who ate too much of protein-rich foods, urea needs a lot of water to be excreted. Therefore, he or she will pass urine frequently. Let's look at osmoregulation. Now, before we look at osmoregulation, you know about osmotic pressure. Osmotic pressure is the force that is produced when water is absorbed by osmosis. The more concentrated the dissolved nutrients, the less water molecules, or the higher the osmotic pressure. Now, water moves from low osmotic pressure to high osmotic pressure. Okay, so osmoregulation is the regulation process of blood and tissue fluid by regulating the amount of water and dissolved salt, mainly the sodium, okay, in the body. Osmosis is important to ensure that the tissue fluid and the cell sap are isotonic to prevent cell crenation and also lysis. Now, osmoregulation is achieved mainly through regulation of the volume of urine produced by the kidneys. The kidneys plays an important role in osmoregulation. Two important hormones in osmoregulation are antidiuretic hormone ADH and also the aldosterone. Okay, let's look at the mechanism of homeostasis and osmoregulation. Now, osmoregulation is by the kidneys. Now, the body regulates water and concentration of salt at normal level through the osmoregulation process. ADH plays an important role in osmoregulation by regulating the quantity of urine produced. Hypothalamus controls the production of ADH through negative feedback mechanism by increasing the secretion of ADH if the blood osmotic pressure is higher than normal and hypertonic urine is produced. And it reduces the secretion of ADH if the blood osmotic pressure is lower than normal, hypotonic urine is produced. Okay, so it is also increases the permeability of collecting duct. So urea will move into the medulla and medulla becomes concentrated. So as a result, water moves out the descending limb. So ADH is released when osmoreceptors detect low level of water in the blood. Okay, so the effect is that blood too concentrated, ADH level is high, blood too dilute, ADH level is low. Okay, aldosterone is a hormone that is secreted by the adrenal cortex. This hormone plays an important role in regulating the normal level of sodium in the blood, and also it aids in the reabsorption of water. Lack of sodium in the blood will stimulate the secretion of aldosterone from the adrenal cortex. The hormone reacts on distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct to increase the reabsorption of sodium that further increases the reabsorption of water. And this will increase the volume and the pressure of blood. So this also consider under the mechanism of homeostasis through negative feedback mechanism. Okay, so let's look at the regulation of blood osmotic pressure through negative feedback mechanism. So as usual, we have the stimulus, we have the osmoreceptors. Okay, stimulus detected by the osmoreceptors in the pituitary gland. Osmo is because of osmosis, water, so that's why it's osmoreceptors. Okay, and then there is a corrective mechanism which produces effect to bring back the water content to normal. Okay, it's either the water content increases or decreases. Okay, now let's say you have too much of salt, okay, or you have sweating. Okay, that means the water content in the blood becomes low. So this will be detected by the osmoreceptor in the pituitary gland. So the corrective mechanism is that osmoreceptors detect changes. Okay, the pituitary gland was stimulated and ADH secretion will be more. So when more ADH, then more water will be reabsorbed. And the wall of distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct will become more permeable to water. So there will be less reabsorption of salt and more reabsorption of water. So what happens is that the urine output will become low. So small volume of concentrated urine will be produced and water content will be back to normal. Now, if the person drink too much of water, then water content in the blood becomes high, detected by the osmoreceptors in the pituitary gland. So now here we need less ADH to produce more urine. So the corrective mechanism is that osmoreceptor detect the changes, pituitary gland is not stimulated, there is no ADH secretion. So no ADH secretion meaning less water reabsorbed. And the wall of distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct becomes more permeable to salt and more reabsorption of salt happen. So when this happens, the urine output is high. That means the volume, it has a large volume of dilute urine. Okay, dilute urine. So the water content now can be back to normal. So if you have lack of water in your body, then your urine output will be low and concentrated. If you drink too much of water, then your urine output will be high and dilute. Okay, so remember, if you have too little water in your blood, you produce very concentrated urine. That means very little water in it. If you have too much of water in your blood, you will produce very dilute urine. Dilute urine means a lot of water in it. Okay. Okay, now let's look at a hot question. Okay. Now, why is urine test conducted to determine if a person has taken drugs? Yes, drugs in the bloodstream are secreted into the renal tubule and excreted through urine. So by testing the presence of drugs in urine, we can determine whether the person is taking drugs or not. Okay. Okay, now let's look into hemodialysis. Okay, hemodialysis is a process of cleansing blood through the dialysis machine. Okay, the dialysis machine uses semi-permeable membrane, or we call it as dialysis membrane, to separate big molecules from the small molecules through diffusion. Okay, in hemodialysis, the blood is transported into a tube from the artery of the hand into the dialysis machine. And in the machine, the blood is flowed into the convoluted tube. Now, the wall of the convoluted tube that is semi-permeable will filter out waste substances and restore the normal blood substances before the blood is returned to the body through the vein in the hand. Now, the process of filtration and the recovery of blood composition in the dialysis machine. What happens here is that a coil loop made of semi-permeable membrane is immersed in the dialysis fluid, okay, and which is in the dialysis machine. Now, the dialysis fluid carries the waste substances from the blood and prevents useful products from leaving the blood. Now, when the blood flows in the convoluted tubule, small molecules such as urea and other waste substances are absorbed through the small pores in the dialysis fluid. Okay, you can look at the picture inside the dialyzer. Okay, macromolecules such as protein and blood cells that are very huge are unable to cross, okay, the small pores and it remains in the tube. Useful substances such as salt, glucose, that are very relatively small, they cannot cross the pores into the dialysis fluid as their concentration in the fluid and blood are equal. So the same concentration of these useful substances such as glucose in the blood and dialysis fluid will cause equal rate of diffusion both ways and as in dynamic equilibrium. So as the dialysis fluid does not contain excess salt, urea and waste substances, these substances diffuse from the blood into the dialysis fluid and then you get a clean, cleared filter blood goes back into the body. So there are two videos here. I will put the link in the description box below. You can look at the videos, learn through the videos more on hemodialysis process. Okay. All right. So we are done. Okay. I hope the lesson is useful for you. If you are done learning and making your notes, please do formative practice 13.2 to test your understanding. Okay, there are 4 questions as usual. The first one, in which part of the kidney can proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, and distal convoluted tubule be found? Already discussed in the slides. And then suggest 2 possible activities that can cause the walls of collecting duct to become more permeable to water. So what can be done? Okay, this is a hot question. Number 3, state how sodium ions, water, and glucose are reabsorbed into the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay. And lastly, number 4, this is also a hot question. An individual suffers damage in one kidney. Does the individual need to undergo hemodialysis? Suggest steps that this individual needs to take in order to go through his daily life without problem. So we have 2 kidneys. If one is gone, what happens? Okay. I will put the answers in the description box below so you can check your answers once you are done with the formative practice. Okay, so with that, I am done. I will end my video here. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Bye bye.